Hello everyone, I'm Alpha Heavy Gamer. Welcome to the channel and I'm glad you tuned in. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Russian aviation tech tree, specifically what's left to add, and specifically from a top tier perspective. I play low and mid tier, but I don't really cover them a whole lot in these types of videos. Maybe some other day, but kind of not this time. I will have some notable mentions though that are mid tier, so don't worry too much about that. I think at least for the Russian tech tree, we've gotten all the Mig-23s that we're going to get. There still is a lot more to add, and we haven't gotten a 4th generation jet yet for Russia. So let's jump in and discuss what's left for this tech tree. Alright, so the first aircraft I'll talk about here, funny enough, is the Mig-21. So we're kind of out of Mig-23s to add for Russia like I was talking about, but there are some modernized Mig-21s that can still be added to the game. Now, it's arguable, this first one, whether it would go into the Russian tech tree or the Israeli tech tree, but there is the Mig-21 2000, which is modernized with Israeli electronics, some Israeli weapons, and an advanced radar, which could possibly make into the game. It'll probably go to Israel though. There is also the Romanian Mig-21 LanceR A, B, and C. The A version being the ground attack, B is the trainer, so we probably wouldn't see that. But there is the LanceR C, which is the dedicated interceptor variant. So full disclosure, this is also an Israeli upgrade of the Mig-21. It can carry Python 3s, Fire Magic 2s, carry smart weapons, has an advanced Israeli radar, so probably wouldn't come to the Russian tech tree, but maybe. Gaijin's done things, crazy things before. Alright, so the next aircraft I'll talk about is the Mig-29 Fulcrum, probably the most logical choice after the Mig-23. This jet is highly anticipated. I can't wait for it to come to the game. I think it's pretty close. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking it's got to be right around the corner, as Russia doesn't have a 4th generation jet yet. So what I talked about on my F-16 video I think still applies here. If you haven't seen that video, please check it out. But I think that with so many variants of the Mig-29 flying around, the gaijin's going to have to do better than Mig-29 early and Mig-29 late. Especially if they want to do the jet justice. There's so many versions that could come to the game that if they do it that way, we're going to be missing out on a lot. Now the next jet up is the Mig-35, and I put it here separately even though it's still a Mig-29 Fulcrum technically, but the Mig-35 is a much more modernized and upgraded version of a basic Mig-29. Lots more capability. This is been billed as a 4th gen plus kind of jet. It can use all kinds of new precision weapons, and it also has a passive electronically scanned array radar. Alright, so next up is a Mig-25 Foxbat, a high altitude interceptor, very notable for its history. I'm not really pumped for the jet to come. I know that it is going to come to the game at some point, but a lot of people might be disappointed if they're expecting some kind of dogfighting, extraordinaire, because it is not that. But nonetheless, there's a couple versions, more than a couple versions that Gaijin could put into the game, which could be pretty interesting. Alright, next up is the Mig-31 Foxhound, a super Foxbat if you will. High altitude interceptor, way more capable than the Mig-25 ever was, extremely powerful in long range missiles, and an extremely powerful radar. In fact, it was one of the first jets in the world with a passive electronically scanned array. Now there are more than enough versions of the Mig-31 Foxhound for Gaijin to keep things interesting. I'm going to be keeping my eye on this jet for when it comes to the game. I think it's going to be a sleeper and be pretty good. Okay, so moving on, the next jet up is the Su-24 Fencer. Now this is a looks like a Russian version of an F-111, supersonic fighter bomber, carries lots of air-to-ground ordnance. This jet has seen a lot of combat. I mean, it's been in a lot of different wars. Very rugged looking to me. There's more than enough to go around, I think, for the Su-24. More than a few variants that could come to the game. Alright, so moving down the Sukhoi line here, I'll talk about the Su-25. I know it's not new to the game. We already have 2 variants of it. But there are lots more Su-25s. Some of them a lot more capable than the ones we have right now. The Su-25 TM, for example, or even the T, I'd love to see that in the game. So lots more variants of the Su-25. I don't think Gaijin's run out of those anytime soon either. Alright, so next up is the Su-27 Flanker, the Su-27. I love this plane. Personally, it's very stunning to look at. Very beautiful aircraft. Designed to compete against fighters like the F-15 and F-14. Carries lots of missiles. Has a very good radar. Is very maneuverable. Very long range. So when this jet comes to the game, it's going to bring some tremendous capability. There are so many variants of the Flanker. When and if the jet comes, probably just when. I'll do a deep dive into the different variants, but not here. But just suffice to say, Gaijin has a lot of variants of the Flanker to play with, and that's not even talking about the more modern versions of it. Next up is the Su-30 Flanker, also another very beautiful aircraft. Different enough that it deserves its own category. It's a multi-role, more strike and interdiction focused version of the Flanker, two-seater. There's so many versions of the Su-30 that Gaijin can have a field day with this one as well. I like to call this jet like the Russian version of the F-15E Strike Eagle. Lots of air-to-ground capability, very good radar, thrust vectoring capability, so it's going to be really nice. Alright, so next up is the Su-35 Flanker. Some people call this a super flanker. It took what was good in the Su-27 and it just upped the game for this airframe. So second generation Su-27 just took more of what was good and just made it even better. Alright, so next up is the Su-34 Fullback. Now this aircraft has always been a little odd to me just because of the way it looks, the side-by-side seating. And the roll seems a little redundant with the Su-30, but this is a medium-range fighter bomber based off the Su-27. But this jet can carry a wide range of air-to-ground ordnance, smart weapons, cruise missiles, so it's going to be a good addition when it does come. So now here are some notable mentions, kind of like some cats and dogs of the Sukhoi line. So the first one is the Su-37, what they call the Terminator, which is a technology demonstrator. It showcased a lot of abilities that eventually went into the Su-35, but it was one-off, never went into production. Another one is the Su-33 Flanker, which is the carrier-borne version of the fighter. It has canards. I know a lot of people seen canards on the Flanker. The Su-33 specifically had canards. It also had a larger wing than baseline Su-27s. So another notable mention here is the Su-47 Berkut. It featured the forward swept wing technology, some advanced composites, and some experimental fly-by-wire technology. This aircraft was principally a prototype and technology demonstrator, never went into serial production. There were some provisions for it to carry weapons, but I don't know if those weapons were ever tested on the aircraft. But if Gaijin could, I guess sprinkle some fairy dust on it, maybe this jet could end up coming to the game. It looks pretty amazing. I mean, it's super maneuverable. A lot of the technologies that it had eventually went into the Su-35, but very nice to have nonetheless. Okay, so almost done with the Sukhois, the Su-57 Felon. Of course, this is a 5th gen fighter, multi-role. This isn't coming to the game for a long time. Nonetheless though, very beautiful jet. At some point, just like with the F-22, F-35, we'll see the Su-57 Felon. Okay, so next up is Yakolov, specifically the Yak-141 Freestyle. Now this was a supersonic vertical takeoff and landing fighter jet designed to replace the Yak-38 Forger, so lots more capability if the Yak-141 had actually made it into service. Unfortunately it didn't, because the Soviet Union collapsed, as we all know, and this fighter was cancelled. If the Yak-141 had made it into service, it definitely would have brought tremendous capability. For example, it used the same helmet-mounted sight as the Mig-29. It could carry semi-active radar homing missiles and active radar homing missiles in the form of the R-77. Overall, 4 prototypes were built, and there's 2 surviving to this day, I believe. So another kind of weird technology demonstrator here that I wanted to mention is the Project 1.44. So this was a early 5th generation prototype. Only one was ever built. The whole thing kind of collapsed around when the Soviet Union collapsed. There was, like I said, only one prototype ever built. development was really slow, and then it got canceled. They did make one flight though, so unknown what kind of weapons it would have carried or were tested with. I'll leave that up to Gaijin to figure out if this thing did ever come to the game, but it does look pretty cool. One thing I wanted to talk about really quick before I end the video is bombers. When I did my last video like this, when I covered British aviation, I didn't talk about the V-Force, the bombers, so I wanted to kind of make up for that here. Now, not all bombers. Certainly bombers like the Tu-60 or 160 Blackjack probably is too much for the game, but bombers like the Tu-16 Badger, the Tu-22 Blinder, and maybe even the Tu-22 M3 Backfire. I would love to see those type bombers come to the game. They're, as far as footprint wise, airframe wise, they're pretty small. Certainly not something as big as a Bear or, you know, like B-52 sized. But let me know what you think about that. All right, before I end the video, I couldn't help myself on some of these. I have some more notable mentions. So the IL-102 looks pretty cool. I mean, these wouldn't be top tier. These are definitely mid-tier planes. The IL-40, there's also the Tu-128 Fiddler, which is a long-range interceptor. And of course, the Sukhoi Su-15 Flagon, which is another long-range interceptor. So lots of stuff that could still come in mid-tier or in the form of event vehicles or something. All right, guys, so really that's all I got here. Let me know what you think about all of the aircraft I named for the Russian tech tree. You know, the big meat portion that I talked about. And hopefully we'll start to see some of these jets. All right, thanks a lot for checking out the video. If you like this, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing. Thanks.